everybody, and welcome to the spoiler review for this brand new episode that dropped, this surprising episode that dropped for the Sandman on Netflix. I am the Outlaw John Rocha here on the Outlaw Nation. Excited to be diving in to discuss this episode. It's an unusual episode, not really in the canon or the overall story that was being told in the Sandman series. I hope you've watched the Sandman series. And again, this is a spoiler review. So if you have not watched this episode or the Sandman series, I think you're not going to get too much out of it, because we're going to dive in deep to the things that I liked and didn't like in over both of these stories that were told within this episode, Dream of a Thousand Cats and Calliope. And before I jump in, I just want to remind you all to please subscribe to the channel down below. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell button so you see when we're dropping all the content we do here. Come and follow me on Twitch, the Outlaw Nation on Twitch, and the Patreon, patreon.com/John Rocha. See the multiple tiers that work for you in supporting all we got going on here on the Outlaw Nation. All right, I'm going to take this into two sections. I'm going to start with Dream of a Thousand Cats, as the episode does, and then jump into Calliope after that. So the basic plot of this one is that a young cat gets convinced to leave its house. It's a very well taken care of cat, very loved cat by its owners for sure, but it gets convinced to leave its house to go with this gray cat to join these other cats at a cemetery late at night, because they are there to show up to hear from a certain somebody, a certain thing, giving them a message. And when they get there and everybody shows up, and there's some doubts, or some people saying, what's the point? Nothing's going to change. Some other cats are like, yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what this message is all about. And then just when they get all gathered, we see this concrete angel. It's got a weird kind of Doctor Who vibe to it as well, for those of you who watch Doctor Who. And all of a sudden, the Siamese cat shows up, jumps off the tree, lands on top of the head of the concrete angel there in the cemetery, and begins to tell their story. And it's voiced by Sandra Oh, this Siamese cat. So great to see or hear Sandra Oh's voice in this. And she tells the story of how she was a cat who was taken care of by her owners, and that she saw another cat, fell in love with that cat, had a litter of kittens, and the litter of kittens were killed by the male owner of the cat. There was a brick tied to the bag and thrown into the water. Then we hear that the Siamese cat begged and prayed to the king of cats to help her. She goes into this dream, and in this dream, she goes on this long, arduous journey to meet the king of dreams, which is, of course, Dream there from the Sandman series. And he tells her of a time when the cats ruled humans, when they ate humans, when humans groomed them and took care of them, but then they hunted the humans. But one human stood up and convinced 1,000 humans to believe that they were better than the cats. And then eventually they got bigger than the cats. And that's how the cats ended up in this place. So the basic message that she's saying is she is going town to town, city to city, trying to convince 1,000 cats to dream at the same time of human beings going back to where they were before, which is smaller than the cats, so the cats can rule the world again. So very interesting story. Really enjoyed seeing it animated in this way. And it reminds me of the Undone animation. If you guys have watched that show on Prime Video, it has that vibe in terms of the style of animation. I really liked it. Great voiceover work overall from Sandra Oh, and of course from Tom Sturridge there as Dream, and the conversations that they have, and this idea that if a bunch of people dream it, it can happen. If a bunch of cats dream it, it can happen. If a bunch of creatures dream it, it can happen. It's fascinating because you can actually take the message here and go like, well, if these people who are trod upon by society, if enough people dream and get together and believe that they can be bigger than the people they are being trod upon, they themselves will now take the power back in a society. So there's messages there. You can look at it gender specific as well. Women in our world are basically treated as second-class citizens in a lot of countries. Certainly we're seeing that now in our country with the removal of abortion rights, with the way they're being treated, with the assaults and the conviction rate of these attacks from women, the sexual assault and sexual violence, and this idea that if enough women get together and dream of a stronger time, they themselves, and put it in motion, they themselves can retake power in the society and change the power dynamic. People of color cutting together, rechanging the power dynamic, or changing the power dynamic, as we saw with the civil rights movement, as we saw with Cesar Chavez's movement, as we're hopefully seeing now with the Me Too movements and the Black Lives Matter movements. We're seeing changes in our society that a dominant force, no matter how much you may be tricked into thinking that, or brainwashed into thinking that dominant force is taking care of you, is feeding you, is giving you a nice house, a nice life, never doubt that they will do the most brutal thing to maintain their power. And certainly we hear that with the master of the Siamese cat when she's telling her story. We go to flashbacks. The fact that he would take a brick, tie it into a bag full of kittens, and toss it into the ocean. And of course, there's slavery symbolism there too. If you read Middle Passage, or if you hear the stories, if you saw Amistad, you see these stories and you hear these actual stories about how slaves were thrown into the water, chained to each other to die on the way over to America if they stepped up or fought back or did anything, or if they had too much cargo, or if they were going to be caught bringing slaves over, they dumped them into the water and killed them all. So it's horrific to think about the depravity within the human soul to commit these kinds of crimes. So I thought this story was so well done and adapted from the book itself there, the Sandman series. And I thought they really brought across what they needed to bring across. The animation was great. The voiceover work was great. And the story and the symbolism message. And certainly that ending where those two owners are looking at their cute little kitten, dreaming and doing whatever. Like, oh, isn't it cute? And we see little kitten simulating what the Siamese cat had seen through the eyes of Dream when he was telling her about the time when cats ruled and how they played and toyed with humans and then ate them, caught them in their mouths and ate them. So certainly that is an interesting image and final scene to end the story on. So I thought it was really, really well done. And again, a lot of symbolism, a lot of messages you can take from it for sure. Just because people take care of you, just because people are in charge of you, just because people give you a life or give you a home, don't be fooled. Sometimes that's being done to keep you apathetic, to keep you soft, to keep you worried of losing these comforts that you've grown accustomed to because you don't see that you can actually be worthy of more. So I love that as a story overall. All right, let's move over to Calliope. This was really fantastic, and we continue the Doctor Who vibes. Oh, I should mention in the Dream of a Thousand Cats, David Tennant is a voice in there, and his wife as well is a voice in there. Michael Sheen is a voice in there. But here we have a different approach to a story. It's live action this time with Calliope, and this is an adaptation. And here we saw some changes, some real distinct changes between the story that we see in the comics of Sandman and the story that we got here in 2022. Some really great updating and adaptation being done here for this story of a young man, Richard Maddock, who is an author, who's a lecturer as well. He's written one book, but we find out that he's very frustrated that he has not written another book, and we find out that he's in arrears to the book company, because the book publisher rather, because they've given him an advance, and it's been 2 years since he's sent anything, even a paragraph. We find out when he has a conversation with his agent, and then we find out that he has gotten some sort of gift from a woman named Nora, who I think is a student in his class. She's, I think, a nurse. And so he brings this object, we don't know what the object is yet, to this gentleman named Erasmus Fry. We find out it's an author, and it's played by Derek Jacobi, the great Derek Jacobi there. And we find out that when he was 27 years old, he was researching a book. He went to Greece, and he went to this mountain, and at this mountain, he saw this scroll on the ground, read the scroll, realized that it was attached to a muse, and so he realized if he followed the steps in the scroll, he can control the muse or own the muse. So he goes through the steps, sets the scroll on fire, and Calliope, who is the youngest of the muses, who was out there bathing, now becomes his servant or a slave. And in the book, she is pretty brutally treated. She is raped. She is sexually assaulted. This is what Erasmus Fry does in order to get her to inspire him to write books, to take from her gift. That's basically what he is doing to make himself famous. But when Richard Maddox shows up at Erasmus Fry and they have their conversations about all this, of course, Richard is completely taken aback and shocked and stunned that this is a muse that Erasmus Fry is giving to her. But then he also hears that Erasmus Fry's books are no longer being published. No one is talking about them. So this idea that you can create a long-lasting work by violating the humanity, or not the humanity, violating the rights and the ethics of someone's body shows you that it's only a temporary success or temporary win, kind of like Salieri in Amadeus. It's a temporary victory, a temporary fame, when the great ones are inspired by something more. So we see that come through here. Erasmus hands Calliope over to Richard Maddox. Maddox takes her. And the thing that I really like about this story is Maddox is portrayed as a good guy from the most part. Seems like a nice guy. In the comic book, Richard is already like freaking out and desperate and hungry. So this version, he's a nicer guy. So we're seeing how even a nice man who is desperate, who is chasing fame and hungry for this illusion of success, will do the most horrible things in order to achieve it. And he does, when we find out, he does rape Calliope to start this process of getting these stories from her to make himself famous again, you know, to churn out the second book, churn out another book, going to Hollywood, doing movies. But then we see him on the phone saying things like, I need the crew to be 50% women, 50% people of color. So certainly he's got a good point of view, but he's also doing these horrible things. And that's another great moment of symbolism here, right? Just because someone is super liberal and super progressive doesn't mean that when they're desperate to maintain fame or desperate to stay in a certain position, they won't violate certain laws of man, certain laws of humans in order to achieve that. So, you know, don't be fooled by people who say all these nice things to you, because sometimes behind the scenes, they're doing some pretty terrible things to stay in the position that they're in. And I'm sure some of you listening to me or watching me now know exactly what I'm talking about and have seen it happen now in our world, in our society, with people on the left, with people on the right, and people in the middle in our world for sure, and in other countries as well. So I found this one to be a really fascinating exploration for sure, because I enjoyed how they made the adaptations and the changes in this story so different from what you see in the comics, yet still telling the basic story. Because King of Dreams shows up because he's called by Calliope. We find out Calliope was once married to the King of Dreams. They had a child. The child died going into Hades, trying to save his lady love. And that ended up causing the separation between Calliope and Dream. And when the last time Calliope saw Dream, she had told him, I never want to see you again, because she kind of blamed Dream for what happened there with their child. When Dream shows up again, this is after he's been imprisoned by Burgess. So in a way, it is still somewhat connected to the overall story. I did mention earlier that these two stories are not necessarily canon in the thing, but this one is kind of connected to the story there from the first 10 episodes of Sandman. But we hear no allusions to Calliope. I don't think no allusions to anything with Calliope. So this is all kind of new as we're getting this information. And she talks about when he showed, because she thought he wasn't going to show up, because she calls the three fates that we saw in Sandman. They say they can't help her and that only the King of Dreams might be helping her. But she says there's no way he'll help me because he's a pretty terrible guy. So again, hints or allusions to how Dream was before he was changed when he was imprisoned. And when he shows up to help Calliope, he certainly, it seems to Calliope, a different person. He wants to certainly make Richard Maddock pay for the stuff he did and wants to unleash his full vengeance on him. But he only unleashes a taste of the vengeance on him by giving him all these ideas. He starts writing his ideas on the wall with the blood from his fingers. We see that he is punishing him by giving him too many ideas when he had almost no ideas before. And then by the end, when Calliope pleads for the King of Dreams, for Dream to let Richard out of that cage of ideas, he acquiesces, which surprises Calliope. So we see that Dream has changed. We also see that Calliope has come out of this in a different place. She is open to this idea of forgiving the man, not forgiving the action. And she's not doing it for him. She's doing it for herself. So an interesting message there. And look, those of us who have been wronged in life, sometimes it can, I'm sure everybody who's listening has been wronged at some point in life. It can be hard to forgive the person who committed the wrong to you. It's a hell of a journey to go on, but letting go of that pain, letting go of that anger can be the path to you living a better life. Because being lost in the anger, being lost in the need for revenge, need for justice, it can at times send you down some really dark paths. It can lead to an unhappy life. It can lead to a frustrating life. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't pursue justice. It's just saying forgiving the person allows you to move past it. And of course, that's what the show is saying. Certainly what Calliope is saying. If anyone has had anything like what happened to Calliope happen to them, I'm certainly not going to advise you to go any path or walk any path, but certainly something to consider in this show for sure, which I thought was really well done. I was reading this great feature from Amelia Emberwing over here on IGN, and I'll link to it there in the description of this video. But great breakdown and analysis of the changes that they made from a female point of view. And I really appreciated how she spoke about the fact that in the past, and certainly in the original version of this Sandman story in the comics, the rape can be seen as exploitive. Now, you saying, oh, well, we're showing the rape so we can get people on board to want vengeance and will satisfy the vengeance by killing this person or putting this person in jail. But what's been really interesting over the last few years in discussions about how rape is depicted in film or in TV or in novels or in comic books is this idea that showing the rape is exploitive, that can inspire other people to want to commit the rape because they see that. So those of us who are level-headed see something like that and are completely disgusted, but there are unstable people who see that and get inspired to do it or develop a hunger to rape somebody. So that's an interesting approach to it for sure, to look at it from that point of view. So it opened my mind as a man hearing from a woman and how she analyzed and broke down the changes here in this story. So overall, just fantastically well done. Really loved the performances here. And I mentioned a Doctor Who connection earlier, and I didn't mention Arthur Carville is the lead in this story, and he does an incredible job. Those of you remember him as Rory from Doctor Who, he is fantastic in this story here. Watching him as I said, a nice guy devolve into the desperate situation that he's in, and then of course that moment where they show just the blood on his cheek from having assaulted Calliope and what he goes through in that process, and of course never feeling like he's 100% in the right place, and then constantly changing the goalposts, even though he told her he was going to let her go after the first story that she gave him, and that he said, you know, not all writers are liars, where here he proved that he was. And when Dream shows up, he has the audacity to be upset at Dream, and then Dream completely dismantles him. So just really great performance from him throughout this episode, and especially by the end there when he is in the hospital, when he can't think of anything, we can't even come up with an idea, can't even remember Calliope or Dream or any of that. It's just fantastic emotional work there from him. So Arthur Carville, just let's see more from him, for God's sakes, because I really enjoyed him in this. Tom Sturridge, of course, really good as Dream. You know, those the quiet moments of vengeance when he's speaking to him, you know, sit down, how dare you, those kinds of things. And then, of course, dropping the dream, but then having those moments with Calliope. And Calliope deserves a massive shout out. MELISSANTHI MATHUT is fantastic as Calliope. Really, I've never seen her work, or if I have, maybe in passing as a character in a show or two when I've watched some British stuff, but I don't remember her. So this to me was a new experience with a new actress, and I thoroughly enjoyed what she brought to Calliope and the levels that she was playing with, the steely determination, even in the moments when she is begging for the fates to save her, to help her. You can tell there's still a steel and a strength. And then the back and forth with her and Erasmus, the back and forth with her and Richard. And then, of course, when Dream shows up, we see her shock, a slight shock, you know, not an overt shock, just a subtle shock here at how different Dream is. And we sense that the affection, the love is still there between them. And even at the end there, when they share the moment by the door where she says, I'd like to come visit you in the land of Dream and maybe kind of, you know, heal together, grieve together, bury our son mentally together in a place where we can achieve something. Dream gives her more in the reaction than he does in the comics, which is really nice to see. And he says, perhaps. So it's not a closed door, and I hope not, because again, MELISSANTHI MATHUT is just fantastic in this role. So I'd love to see her come back as Calliope. And then, of course, it doesn't end with Dream, which I think was a nice change that Amelia Emberwing pointed out as well. It doesn't end with Dream. It ends with her walking out, having reclaimed her power, having reclaimed her strength, walking out in this beautiful, you know, white gown or white toga, and walking the streets there by herself with a new strength. And I really appreciated that. And I love that. What a nice change from the comics. The comic ends with Dream. So he kind of gets the last word. It's her getting the last word. So I really enjoyed the way both of these stories were adapted and updated. I'm sure having a female writer with Neil Gaiman here, Catherine Smith McMullen, helped to kind of shape this little, because these are both female oriented. The Siamese Cat with Sandra Oh, and here Calliope, her journey here. So we're seeing, although we, in the Calliope story, it's Richard Maddock and all, but it's really focused on her and how she can get out of this situation, how she's being abused, and how the men who abuse her and take her gift from her are sent down these terrible paths, because we hear about Erasmus Fry killing himself because no one wanted to put his books back in print. So these are the vengeance. This is the vengeance that happens to them. Richard, they're writing on the wall with blood and lost in his own mind, and then not being even able to generate ideas, but in the end, Dream shows mercy because Calliope asked him to show mercy. So really interesting points of views here. And of course, Louise Hopper, the female director of Calliope, I think having a female director, having a female writer as part of the adaptation team, I think that all helped to change the point of view and reconstruct this story in a way that was more palatable to audiences nowadays, who have certainly opened their minds and their eyes more to kind of appreciate and understand and listen to the female point of view. It isn't across the board, I know that, but certainly more people are aware of it, and adapting this story in that way shows you that more people are more aware of it and are open to changing and adapting things from years past. Certainly Neil Gaiman is a different man than he was back when he wrote the original Sandman comics, for sure. So that's got to be factored in. And Hisko Holsing, who is the director of Dream of a Thousand Cats, shout out to him as well for doing a fantastic job in directing that animated sequence. So our animated episode, rather. So what did y'all think? Did you like these two episodes? You like the story that was being told here, the themes, the symbolism that was going on in both of these stories? Did you enjoy the performances, the animation? Did you enjoy the live action approach to live action Calliope episode? Did you enjoy what we were being shown? Did you enjoy the changes, some of the adaptation changes that were made here to make it more palatable for 2022 eyes, to essentially update the approach to both of these stories? Did you enjoy that? Let me know down there in the comments section below. Hit a like on this video, share it on your social media, and most of all, subscribe to the channel down below. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell button, so you see when we're dropping all the content we do here on the Outlaw Nation channel. And share this video on your social media with the hashtag The Outlaw Nation. I would really appreciate it, so more people come and discover us, and come and follow and subscribe to me on Twitch, The Outlaw Nation. And if you really want to support what we got going on here, head on over to the Patreon. Patreon.com/John Rocha. Hang out with us. We do 2 hangouts a week. We do watch alongs. The Discord is always hopping with great conversations. Plus, we've got the Outlaw Nation Movie Trivia League. Now that the Schmodown is shutting down, maybe you want to come and compete in a trivia league. We have it. You got to be a patron at a certain level, and you can be part of it. We got teams, singles, movie-specific matches. It's a lot of fun. No drama, no toxicity, just hanging out, having a lot of fun, playing against each other with trivia. And you might get a chance to play me, which could be a lot of fun as well. So, all right. Well, thanks so much for watching this review. Hope you are well. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time with another brand new spoiler review here from the Outlaw Nation.